Oh, it's going slow. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Hello. How's everyone doing out there? There is no Casey, but we do have a guest. Steve Holden, New York 24, is our special guest. But before we get to the interview, is that my phone? Do you hear that? I hear like in my ear, I hear, oh, you know what? I do this all the time. It's my phone and the volume was on. So I'm like hearing it in my ear. Let's start again. Casey is not here, but I am here. We do have a guest, Steve Holden, New York 24. And I'm still hearing it. Do you not hear?
No,
Oh, that's so weird.
I don't hear it. I don't hear it.
It's like I totally hear myself over and over and over again. That's the craziest thing. Well, okay, now it stopped. Can you hear me without this?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear
Okay.
you just fine.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these off because I think,
It's causing an echo.
yeah, and it never has before. So this is very strange because my phone is totally nothing, but I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, I had the same thing when I shoot my videos too, and I just go straight with it instead of using phone.
Oh no, I don't like the way
Yeah, it's
okay. You can hear me now, right? But I'm hearing an echo. Oh,
yeah, I had the same thing when I shoot my videos too, and I just go straight with it instead of using phone. And I hear us talking now. I heard our conversation.
Okay, everything is good. You can hear me now, right? See, I'm hearing an echo. Why am I hearing an echo?
I'm
Like
hearing the echo now. I'm hearing the echo now. I just go straight with it. Yeah, I hear it. I hear it. I hear us talking now. I heard our conversation.
Okay, that is, you can hear me now, right? This is the crazy. Hold on. I'm hearing an echo. Why am I hearing? You know what? I think I got it. I think I got it. I think I solved the problem. That was a lot of technical difficulties, but this is going to be a good interview and we're going to make up for the technical difficulties. We're going to start all over again. Give me 1 second. I am going to put my headphones back on. No echoes, right? Okay.
Gotcha.
Wow, maybe Casey is good for something. Casey, I'm messing up your show. I'm sorry. All right. Now we're good. I hear no echoes. Oh my God, this is perfect. I'm sorry, everyone. We are going to start again. Hey, welcome. We have a special guest, Steve Holden, New York 24. Before we get into the interview, as you can see, Casey's not here. He had other things to do. I am just gonna, for the new people here, we are a local online news show. We discuss local, national, and international news. Um, before we get into this interview, please hit that thumbs up, share, and subscribe. And then I'm going to turn this over to Steve for a moment so he can tell you guys a little about himself, how he got here. Because this is a big place to be. Like, this is a big thing trying to flip New York 24. So, how did you get here, Steve?
Well, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a while since you all reached out to me a couple months ago. So I've been involved with Democratic politics since 1990, since I was 18 years old. And that was way back where I grew up in Oklahoma. It's actually a blue part of Oklahoma where it was. And I was a former Young Democrats campus chair. I was with part of the Young Democrats of Oklahoma and the Young Democrats of America, and held some national positions there. Went off into the Army, served for over 20 years.
Wow.
Did a total of 5 deployments, 2 to Iraq, 3 to Afghanistan, but the last one I went over after I retired to help folks out. And ever since, I've been working on getting Afghans out here in
Oh,
the past
wow.
couple of months.
Wow.
A little bit more about me. I am like I said, I'm a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. I'm also very proud of my Cherokee and Cheyenne heritage, as my wife, Julie, is also proud of her Mohawk heritage as well.
Wow.
Yes. I got up here. People ask me all the time, how did a guy talking with an Okie accent end up in?
I wasn't going to mention your accent, but
No, it is. But so the Army sends. I did finance and contracts in the Army, and they send the personnel that do that, particularly officers, up here to Syracuse University to get two masters. And so I am a graduate of the Maxwell School, which is one of the more prestigious public administration schools in the country. And when I did, besides that, I met my beautiful wife, which is the most important thing during that time.
Yes, it is.
And when we retired, we're going to move up here. And I was originally going to run in 2018. And so the party actually vetted me. I went down to meet members of Congress. I went down to national party headquarters there in DC. But then I was recalled back to active duty and had to head back to Afghanistan. So I've been in the race since June, or end of May, June, because some folks kind of drafted me to run, and this is something that's been a job that I've been auditioning for 31 years, and I've had other Democrats across the country. Even though I was in uniform, I would take off the uniform at night and then go out and help local candidates, phone bank for them, walk districts at all different levels.
Wow.
And this is something where it's time to put all of that capital to work, because we saw what happened a couple nights ago, and we need some people with experience and have the ability to navigate these rough waters that we're in right now.
Right. And you have a lot of experience doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your service too.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's get into the interview, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Right. So the pandemic has ravaged small businesses of recent, but businesses have began to open up. However, they're having a hard time staffing. Do you believe wage increases will get more people back to work?
Absolutely will. Because it's a couple things. Businesses are opening back up. And something to remember that when an economy is rebuilding and getting back on an upswing,
right,
you're going to reach a max labor level.
Right.
So so what we're seeing is two things. One, we're seeing where we're hitting employment levels where there's sometimes more jobs than people. Two is that over this past year and a half, and this is me included, and I'm blessed to work from home. I teach finance and contracts to the federal government. So I talk to members of the federal government every day. And people realize how important family is, and the people close to them.
Right.
If you're going to trade your time for money, it ought to be worth it.
Right.
Since 1980, we have seen wage rates stagnate.
Right.
Ever since we've had the destruction of the middle class. I remember this growing up. The destruction of unions, the defunding of our education system, and those give good jobs.
Right.
What we're seeing right now with staff shortages, I see as one, an effect of the economy, but second, people really valuing their time. And if you're going to get that, they need to be a living wage.
Right.
Up here in New York, there is a $15 minimum wage across the state.
Right.
But the rest of the country, there are still problems. So this is a problem that needs to be attacked on a federal level, not just a
Absolutely.
state level.
Right.
And when we do get to 15, the other thing we have to have is we also have to have it indexed for inflation, because we don't want this happening again. We don't want to make this big jump
Right.
and get there. And then all of a sudden, in a few years, inflation goes up and people are right back to where they were.
Exactly. You can't afford it. You can't even afford daycare. Like it's absolutely insane.
No, and you're absolutely correct. You can't afford daycare. Even when I was growing up, and when I was actually, I'd say when I was a young father, um, one of our biggest issues was daycare.
Right.
And my children's mother at the time uh, actually ran a daycare for a while where we were
Mm-hmm.
stationed,
Mm-hmm.
because you had a lot of parents who dual income, had to work,
Right.
had nowhere to take them.
Right.
So I completely support, the child care initiatives that's in the Build Back Better plan. And
Right.
we have to think of infrastructure as human infrastructure as well. It's
Right.
what I call in my platform the 21st century infrastructure plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all part of my Green New Deal for Central New York. So all of this is encompassed into that.
Wow. Yeah. Those wages have to go up. And you're absolutely right about people realizing like their wealth. Like, why am I going to go
Mhm.
have to pay for transportation to get to work? You're paying me minimum wage. I have to get daycare. Then I have to get the family plan of insurance. Like,
Mhm.
where do I get this money from with minimum wage?
And I've lived that. When I
Yeah,
was a young
me
father,
too.
and when I got out of college in 1994, I had to take a job where I delivered, before I came to the Army, where I delivered TV sets and appliances. And for me to afford insurance for a family of four, with two two young children, my wife and I, it took half my paycheck.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was
Embarrassing.
just talking to someone about that. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it's those sorts of
Yeah.
experiences. I know what it's like to not be able to try to figure out how you're going to pay for rent, how you're going to
Right.
pay for food, how are you going to pay for gas in the car, how are you going
Right.
to pay for car insurance.
Right.
Until my in-laws at the time gave us a car, I didn't have a way to get back and forth to work. I
Right.
was walking back and forth, and the grocery store was across the street.
Right.
And so that's the way we had to live. And you also wonder, why, especially millennials, are waiting and putting off having a family. I have a son that'll be 29 in about 10 days. I have a daughter who just turned 28 and a stepson that just
Mm-hmm.
turned 28. And two of the three of them are putting off having families. Only my daughter, who has our 5-year-old grandson,
Mm-hmm.
they're waiting. My son is married. His wife was a dreamer. She was a DACA child, and my son Wes and my daughter-in-law Amanda are waiting to have children
Right.
until they pay off student loans, which is another part of the
Another.
problem.
Yeah. Right.
I just paid off mine, like I
Right.
said, and I'm
Like,
49.
man, you have a grandchild.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
those are it's one thing, but it's a domino effect
Right.
of all of these other things. So it's not people being lazy or not wanting to work or anything. When you have a system stacked against you, it's hard to jump over that fence
Right.
and get on the other side of it.
Right.
And as someone who had to work through it, I don't want people to ever have to go through that and not have to worry about it.
Right.
And we're one of the few, if not the only, westernized country that actually has to deal with these issues, because
Mm-hmm.
all the other ones have solved that problem a long time ago. We absolutely need to get over that.
Yeah, we do. I almost had a segue, but
No, no worries.
so as the climate crisis increases the number of natural disasters, marginalized communities are disproportionately impacted.
Uh-huh.
Um, a lot due to government resource access. They just don't have it.
Exactly.
Another reason we know is because marginalized communities often are near um, power plants, roadways, things like that.
Thank you.
If elected, what would you do to help fight this ongoing crisis?
And I'm glad you asked that question because this is part of my Green New Deal for Central New York. We have an issue here in Central New York. The city of Syracuse is the 18th poorest city in the country. It's the hub city.
Wow, I never
Hub,
knew that.
yeah, it's the hub city of this district, and this is a diverse district. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it has colleges, it has rural areas, suburban areas, a couple urban areas, but the hub city and the major media outlet Syracuse. Well, in South Syracuse, we have a big issue with I-81.
Mm,
And I-81, much like a lot of other highways across America, cut right through disadvantaged communities. That's the case here. So to answer the first part about how to help how to help those communities,
right.
I came up with what's called this South Side Initiative Plan, where they're not only going to tear and what's the mayor here, Ben Walsh, came with something called the community grid. He's actually
Mm,
an independent. And this is a really good idea that he came up with, where we go around, but we kind of take the community back for its residents. Okay, not this big skyway bridge that they're going to do, because there's a huge problem with lead-based paint and lead poisoning in South Syracuse, which is a predominant community of color.
right.
But
Of
the
course.
community split right in half. They deal with there's power grids right.
Mm-hmm.
When you said that, I'm thinking, my goodness, when I went on a walk for Southside a few months ago, back this summer, they talked about this hub power station that was right there, right downtown in a community of color, right in the middle there. Children have to
Wow.
walk by it. There's noise pollution. There is, thank goodness a child hasn't been electrocuted there. Walking home from school, they want to build an on ramp that will go right next to an elementary school. And I'm like, why is this happening? I said, would this happen in other parts of the city?
Right.
And it
Right.
would.
Absolutely not.
So when we do that, though, when we remediate that area, one of the things I'll do with my background with finance and contracts is simply change the federal rules
Right.
to ensure that whatever they do to clean up that neighborhood and to build the community grid the priority goes to people in that community, not private land developers and
Right.
not out-of-state government contractors. It's going to go to there. That's been very well received by people in South Syracuse.
Right.
The other place it goes through is a little town called Nedrow and the Onondaga Nation. The Onondaga Nation, it splits part, or at least it abuts right up next to the reservation. Same issue.
Of
Okay.
course.
Once they
Yeah.
tear that down. So you have it going through primarily an African American community and a Native American community that abut next to each other, instead of looping it around out through more of an industrial area.
Right.
That would actually help the city a whole lot more with commerce. But so that's something we're doing there. The other thing we're talking about in environmental problems up here is we have one of the most polluted lakes in the United States, Onondaga Lake, beautiful lake.
But polluted. Wow.
A historic home of the Onondaga Nation. And what do we have? We have businesses there who are on that land, but they pay nothing back to the Onondaga Nation. Now, the Onondaga Nation is one of the few that's sovereign. But under my plan, they would get money back and have to pay taxes to the nation for the usage of their land, or they can go locate somewhere else.
Right.
That's a very sacred area to them. But and it means a lot to me because that's also where I proposed to my wife.
Right.
Um,
Oh.
and if you we'll talk a little bit about my Twitter and my Facebook accounts and stuff. That's also where I took my picture because that means a lot to me. But it's a beautiful lake, but it's very polluted, and and behind it is a big factory that's just urban blight. So that's a big problem we have. And again, all of that is also part of my Green New Deal,
Right.
my 15-point plan for my Green New Deal for Central New York.
Wow. And I just learned so much.
No worries.
Yeah, wow. So knowing that racism is woven into the system, how would you ensure a community in which neither race or ethnicity determines opportunity and life outcomes?
Well, one of the things we have to do is we have to invest in education.
Yeah.
And to me, I view education like a labor expense. Hey, look, if you want a good educated workforce, you have to, you must invest in K through 12 education, and probably I'd say at least the first 2 years.
Right.
So in regards of ethnicity and race, what we also have to do is stop the old Jim Crow idea of funding schools off property taxes. It was designed that way. So it's, again, I don't actually live in Syracuse. I live out in the suburbs. These are well funded out here. Why? Because they pay high property taxes. And we all know that down in the city and out in some rural areas, that's not the case. They don't pay as much. So there has to be oversight and increased funding on the federal level to be able to do this.
Right.
So education is extremely important. And what I would do is just simply reform the way DOD does contracts to pay for it. And not even taking a whole lot, we can fully fund a K through 12 education and meet that gap until we come up with a way to replace a system that is designed to hurt ethnic and racial minorities here in this country. As well as anybody who falls below that poverty line. Like I said before, the hub city of our district is a shining example of what can happen when you have a disproportionate funding system.
Right.
And actually tomorrow night at around this time, I'm going to be on with Friday Night Fights with, that's what they call it, where I'm actually talking people to the Syracuse school district parents and their concerns. Right. And I was on there last week, and they said, first, you're the only political candidates ever got on here and talked to us about these issues. And I gave them a plan of exactly how we're going to attack this. And the same thing I was telling you. And they're like, no one's ever told us that. And I said, yeah. I said, all you got to do is just change a few things. It's not huge, but you actually have to have somebody up there that knows how to do it and is willing to take on the system to get it done.
Right.
And I would know within my first 100 days, I would propose legislation and have government oversight in certain areas and people who I can call day one to ensure that we get that ball rolling from relationships I've built across the federal government.
Right. Wow. A lot of work to do. We need more progressives. Yeah. This is a question that I always ask myself, and I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
How do you think Democrats can better their messaging? Because we seem to be failing.
Well, and this is something actually, so I went to a watch party a couple nights ago, and people were asking me that question. Centrists, progressives, moderate liberals, even some independents were there, the same who don't want, and even some former Republicans who are going, how do you do it?
Right.
And the reason, and what we have to do is not be afraid to punch back. The right has sent a message where truth doesn't matter.
Right.
Facts don't matter.
Right.
All that matters is opinion and feeling. What we have to do is a better job of meeting people where they are. I'll give you a good case in point. My sister, it's not all have these far right views. It's just they get triggered on certain things.
Right.
My sister, she's a Teamster, so she's union. She fought for OSHA standards there at the trucking company where she works. She also had a sexual discrimination lawsuit because they're paying her less because she's female. My nephew works there, and they weren't going to give him any sort of paternity leave to go out to spend time with his, this was about a year ago, his newborn son. But yes, she voted for Trump.
Against her best interest.
Against her best interest. And my father just recovered. But my father, just recovered. He just recovered from double cancer surgery.
Wow.
And he's saying they're worried how to make his insurance copay instead of worrying about being concerned with getting his body to heal and preparing his body for surgery.
Right.
And same issue. And I'm going, why? But I will tell you, with constantly just coming back and not being arrogant about it, but just saying, look, I understand you have problems. Let me tell you what it is. And it's going to take people building trust, because ever since 1985, in fact, I was just talking with one of my endorsers at Blue America, Howie Klein, today. And ever since they took away the fairness doctrine, which made you hear both sides. Under Ronald Reagan and in the mid 80s, they intentionally did that so you could build up right-wing radio. Before that, we didn't have as big a problem trying to get our message across. I mean, look, we the Voting Rights Act, civil rights. We had major infrastructure going on across the country. We had, regardless of party, Democrats and Republicans could agree up till about 1980 that we had a higher marginal tax rate, and we all agreed on it. It was issues on the margins that did it.
Right.
But what they did in 1980 is they started to gut the middle class. So when they did that, they did it by misinformation and telling a lot of more, again, undermining the education system, telling a lot of non-college educated white folks, just to be brutally honest with it, that person that's over there that's struggling just as much as you are, that person's the problem, not the other type. And that's where we have to get to it. But we don't have the time to be patient with it. But what we have to be is unified.
Right.
Okay. Regardless of what side of the party we're on. I'm diehard on the progressive. There are other people looking to enter this race who are centrists. And I was talking to them there, and I said, hey, look, regardless of what happens, we need to come together with a unified message.
Right. Exactly.
Or the people who are there on January 6th are going to take over.
Right.
But we can't just always say, talk about the boogeyman on the other side. We have to actually give people policies.
Right.
Because most of America doesn't vote.
Right. You're only as good as your last policy, right?
Exactly. And we have to tell people, hey, look, President Biden has a bold agenda.
Right.
But I said, instead of worrying in a fear that if you're in a swing district like this, by the way, this district's actually D+9. And it's probably going to get bluer with redistricting. This district voted for President Biden by 9 points. So is a Republican member of Congress. It's the most in the country that way. There's us and one that's out in California that's like this. But the reason is they don't give people ideas.
Right. So
they go back to what they know.
Right.
And we also have to combat the fear mongering. We have to be very clear with our messages.
Right.
You know,
which we're not. We're never on the same page. You got someone over here is like defund the police. And you're like, no, don't say defund the police. It's like it's so much. Nothing is the same. One person will come out and say one thing, and then another person is like saying something totally different. And
here's the thing: we have to be on message to it. Said, hey,
right.
Like I said, I'm a staunch progressive. Let's have that discussion. But let's be united in the fact to let them know, hey, when the right starts talking about critical race theory, understand that's not something that's taught until law school.
Right.
It's not being taught to children. And
Exactly.
if you don't want to hear children about hear about actual factual things that happen, like the transatlantic slave trade,
Right.
or destruction of Native American land and culture, or
Right.
how what happened to Asian Americans on the West Coast. That's that's not bias. That's history.
It's
That's truth.
history. Exactly.
Critical race theory is a completely different thing that's taught in law
Right.
schools,
Which
not
they
in
know.
history books.
They know. They just
They know it.
want to use that as their, race baiting to get people all riled up and upset. Like, ah.
And what it is it's a straw man. And you have to have candidates out in the trail that's going to call that.
And none of them have like that.
They're
Like,
so afraid. They're so
right.
afraid if they tiptoe that issue. But here's the thing: people want to hear the truth,
Right.
and especially, it's like, look, I said, and I'll tell them, I said, hey, look, I'm a retired military officer. My word is my bond. And so when I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to tell you something, I'm going to be straightforward about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll look straight into the camera and just go on a debate or on an ad or whatever and just say, hey, look, you're being lied to.
Right.
We need to call it for what it is.
Right.
Don't be afraid to say that they're
Right.
lying about it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
don't tiptoe through the tulips on this, because we don't
Right.
have time.
We have no time. You're right. What are we waiting for?
My election is coming up here in a year. And I just saw what happened here in a blue county,
Right.
in a blue district, unable to flip the county legislature and even pick up one seat
In a
or two to
blue
do it
district. A
in a
blue
blue
district.
district, because it's also energizing voters. And you have to have a plan. You can't just, it's like I was telling a guy, who was asking me why I got into the race. I said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They never engaged the Native American community.
Right.
They have a rather large Muslim American community here. We never engaged the students up at Syracuse University, or the professors, to that
Big
matter.
mistake.
And you don't, and I said, you barely engage the African American community. I said, and so you're hamstringing yourself across the board.
Right.
Why aren't you doing this?
Right.
And you don't go out and talk to rural Democrats who are worried about broadband. There's some of the people that rely so much on the post office. I grew up in a small community. I was in the FFA in high school. I know exactly what rural progressives are dealing, and rural folks across the board.
Right.
They're left out, but they're not left out by people like you and I. They're left out by people who are convincing them that people like you and I are the problem, when it's not.
Right.
So we have to get that message across.
Right.
We have to be bold and brave enough, to call an apple an apple, to call a banana a banana.
Like,
We have
stop.
to do that.
Yeah. Stop pussyfooting around and just going to tell it. Like, exactly. We watched it right after Youngkin lost. They still were just like,
And you can't do it. And Terry McAuliffe is from Syracuse here, and he's a fellow Maxwell School grad. The advice I would have given him is punch back, punch harder.
Right.
Use that good old Syracuse Orange fighting spirit and go after him.
Right.
And call it for what it is. Hey, folks, look, don't try to, not every race is about Donald Trump.
Right.
Wait, you're giving him too much power right now.
Right.
You know what it is? It's about people want to hear it. You got to motivate people to get out, and you got to tell them the truth.
Exactly.
If you don't do that, we're going to lose the House. We're going to lose the Senate. And we're going to have really good candidates running this cycle. We have a number of them, and some of them you've talked to as well.
Yeah.
Some of my cohorts who are out there who have great ideas. You got to get and back them too. It's right, and
that's it.
And I talked to so many people out on the campaign trail who are also hesitant to give right now because everybody's scared.
Right.
Here's the point. To quote someone who I have a plaque on the wall here in my office, FDR, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And so we can't let that take us over. We need to put the foot on the gas,
Yeah.
and we need to go forward. We need to support candidates, put our money where our mouth is. You put your vote where your mouth is,
Right.
and get out there and walk a district, phone bank for them, do something.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, the Republicans never stop fundraising,
They never.
and they never break
They,
message.
they're always on the offense. We're not going to win on the defense. Like we need to be on the offense. Like why are we always on the defense? And we're not even good at defense. Like we're awful at it.
And I talk to candidates at all levels, congressional candidates, senatorial candidates,
Right.
mayoral candidates, state assembly, state senate. They're all having the same problem.
Right.
And we need to get out of this bunker mentality and leave the bunker and actually go out and try to solve the problem.
Yeah.
You got it. It's so much easier to give people a reason to do something instead of a reason to go against something else. And that's playing defense. And understanding we did have an existential threat for 4 years.
Right.
And a local, national, and international threat. And we had to everybody had to come together for that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How do we stop that from doing it again?
Right.
It's not by fear. It's not by, just like I said, tiptoeing through the tulips on this. We have to actually get out there, because if we don't, they just have a dry run for what happened last time.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have to get out there and be aggressive, be bold, not be afraid, put our money where our mouth is, and we go out there and engage voters.
Exactly. If you were in Congress right now, what would you say to Manchin and Sinema?
Manchin and Sinema?
Yeah.
remember the people that got you there?
Right.
I would tell Senator Manchin, hey, look, do you understand that over 70% of the people in your state support the Build Back Better plan?
Right.
Do you understand that your state, if they had an infusion of cash, could build that up and turn the economy of that state around, one of the poorest and least educated states in the country?
Yes.
I remember when West Virginia was a hardcore Democratic state because of the unions. It was so strong. Build them back.
Right.
You put the money into education there. People in that state there. Senator Sinema, hey, look, understand you have a changing demographic in Arizona. Also understand that a lot of it was communities of color that did it. Not just Latinx communities or African Americans,
right,
but Native Americans.
Right.
The reason President Biden won that state, and that's a community that really needs that plan. On reservations and in adjacent communities, they absolutely need it, just like we do here.
Right.
The Navajo Nation got 74,000 people registered to vote. 72,000 of those voted for President Biden.
Wow.
That's a template for a plan here that we're going to copy. And you should copy it out in other places.
Nice.
So it's tell her, hey, go out and talk to those people.
Right.
And you will understand that if you stand up for them, Senator Sinema, they will stand up for you. It's not too late. You can turn this around.
Absolutely.
And you don't represent your special interests. You represent the people who elected you, and even the people who didn't elect you, who would also benefit for them. As my grandma used to say, you draw more flies with honey than you can venom.
Absolutely.
So things to help your people, and you have plans to do it, and you follow through with it. Corporate lobbyists are not going to be showing up to vote for you. They don't care. But the people of Arizona and the people of West Virginia sure will in 2024.
Right.
That's exactly what both of them are going to do. So they need to remember, both of those two elected leaders need to understand that point.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You kind of answered this last question. What would you say to the exhausted voter, the ones that believe that Democrats can't move the needle? Because in essence, them not moving the needle, them not having a hard time passing this infrastructure bill, it all kind of bounces back to the progressive candidates, you guys, right? Because people are exhausted and it's going to kill you because no one wants to come out because they're not even looking locally. They're looking at the government like, forget about it. So then they forget about you.
And see, here's the thing. The late great Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, said all politics are local.
Right.
And what you have to do is get out and engage your voters. I was at one of those events where I was in Southside Syracuse. And I was talking to folks at the Syracuse Tenants Union. And I sat there and I talked to a gentleman who ran CNY Legal Aid and a young lady who was up with one of the student groups at SU, probably about 19, 20 years old. And she said, I never get involved with electoral politics, but because of you, I'm going to. It's like what President Obama said, don't get upset, vote.
Vote.
Elections have consequences.
Right.
So get out there and you have to select progressive candidates. Now, I will tell you, and the way currently that New York 24 is drawn, it favors progressive Democratic candidates, not establishment ones. That's a mistake they made. And we have that case going on right now. The progressive candidate, the one who won, she won the last 2 times. Her name's Dana Balter. And she and I have talked about this. The primary has progressive voters. It was getting to pivot, which kind of makes our candidacy unique because you have a progressive veteran. And so there's that trust that's coming in. But the other thing is you want to talk about policy to people, but break it down to them in a way that can be in bite-sized chunks and they can understand that.
Right. Messaging.
And that's what the Green New Deal for Central New York, you could sit and read that 10 minutes and go, that's a darn good idea. And base it simply here. Hey, if I'm going to look to enact national legislation, here's what it's going to do here.
Right.
Nobody else is doing that. Other Democrats aren't. The Republicans sure isn't.
No.
So you have to give them a reason to get out. Because I'm going to tell you, this district's one of the lowest voter turnout districts in the country.
Really?
Well, people don't like to get and vote in Syracuse, New York in early November. It's between
it's cold out. It's too cold.
It's cold. It's snowy. It's steamy. It's winter wonderland. Now, it's not that way right now. If you want to talk about climate crisis.
Yeah, that's a big, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Normally by this time, there's already
2 feet.
But you have to have a plan and you have to engage communities that have never been engaged before.
Right.
Like I said, the Muslim American community. I've been working with Ted Lieu's office to get about 125 Afghans over here. My interpreter today is coming up. Is getting ready to come up here to Syracuse, New York. He was with me in Afghanistan, and he's going to stay with us until we can get him on his feet. There's a large resettlement community here with Interfaith Works, and they're doing great work.
Nice.
But those are communities that never talk to them, and they're grateful when you come and listen to them and understand what their issues are. People aren't talking to college students. Hey, look, you're about ready to enter a life with a whole lot of student debt.
Right.
And here's the point about student debt on that. I had full ride scholarships. I had grants. But I also had to take out student loans just to put food on the table. That's what people forget. You even have, collegiate athletes who are there in full ride scholarships. Now with NIL, it's a different issue, which is for another time. But before that, they had to take out student loans as well because they had to be able to live and to pay their rent and to keep, they still have to pay the gas bill and the electric bill.
Absolutely. And that is a story for another time. Yeah, that's awful.
Talk to them about it and give them a reason to get out of bed. We're also doing we're doing a large voter registration drive there with the Onondaga Nation and with the other nations here in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, otherwise people call the Iroquois League. We are also doing a large voter turnout for the Muslim American community. The problem with these communities and student communities, they don't trust the system. Right. Because you've got to give them a reason to. That's another thing that the right does is they discourage and they beat you down and say, your vote's not going to matter. Right. While they're sending their people out to go vote. Right. And that's what we need to do. We have to energize people. We have to meet people where they are, and the other thing I like to tell Senators Manchin and Sinema is that, hey, look, if you don't eliminate the filibuster and you don't get the For the People Act, the John Lewis Civil Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, okay, and get those reforms in place, you won't be reelected.
Ding, ding, ding. You won't be reelected. That is it.
That's the way that you get it across to any politician.
Right.
Is saying, hey, look, do you understand they're going to try to do voter suppression in Arizona? Hello.
Right.
Wasteful audit down there. West Virginia, I mean, they're already one of the lowest voter turnout places in the country. They have Republicans controlling the entire apparatus of that state. If you want elected, change the system. And that's why civil rights leaders, that's why Bernie came out and went after him and said, hey, look, man, if you don't get this done, you're going against your own interests and your people's own interests.
Absolutely.
So that's how you have to meet them that way. And, it's time that we start, like I said, stop tiptoeing through the tulips and be aggressive with these ideas. So there has to be holistic change, and we need leaders who are brave enough to say it and actually have a track record of doing it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. This was fun, but we're going to get into some speed round questions, which are even more fun.
All righty.
So let's go so I can let you go. I know it's getting late. Yes, it is. So best advice you've ever gotten?
Be yourself.
Worst advice?
Go into the infantry when you were young. That's why I have a whole bunch of injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah. Your favorite vehicle?
My Jeep Grand Cherokee 2017 Trailhawk. It's my favorite one.
Really?
It kind of fits my personality.
How fast have you ever driven it?
The fastest, actually, 85 is the fastest I've driven it. And there are some places around the country you can actually go 85.
Right. 85 is kind of not that fast.
No, but I'm not a lead. I'm not a lead foot. And like I said, my wife says I drive like a grandpa, and I have to remind her that I actually am one. So
do you have two? Do you have two hands on the steering wheel?
I do. That's where my wife is kind of leaned back and going like so, and she's a sarcastic Irish and Mohawk girl from New York, and she'll let me hear it when it's on there.
That's so funny. Name something you've purchased you wished you never did.
My first home back in Oklahoma. We're still trying to sell that.
Oh no! Yeah. Wait, how long have you been?
The better part of about 8 years. because the housing market, we were about ready to get rid of it. Then the housing market tanked. We have somebody that's looking at it right now. That was the worst thing that I purchased. That I would have, and my wife would tell you, Steve, if you don't answer that question that way, you can go out and sleep in the car tonight.
Okay, so name something you didn't purchase and wished you had.
I didn't purchase, but wish I had. Um, I was going to get my wife a poodle once.
Hmm.
And we have two dogs. We have a little schnauzer and we have a Havanese. And I was going to get that for her. And now I wish that I did. Because I'm a huge animal lover. My wife and I are part
Yeah.
of ASPCA, Humane Society. We're proud animal lovers. They'll be all over my campaign ads. They're sitting with their daddy. But yeah,
Yeah.
I wish I would have bought my wife the poodle.
Oh, it's not too late. It's not too late. You can still go
No,
and get a poodle.
that's
Poodles are
it.
very smart. I heard they were like one of maybe the smartest breed of dog, right?
Oh, my daughter has one. And I
Yeah.
keep telling her, hey, I'll get you, hey, let me have your dog. And she goes, no. Her name's Emmy Lou, and she's a little sassy white poodle with full, who's full of attitude. Oh, yeah.
That's what they say. Oh my gosh. Okay, last one. If you could change a law, piece of legislation, what would it be and why?
Uh, well,
Or if you can make one, if you make one, change
one,
one.
the thing that I would do, even though it deals more with the Supreme Court decision, is end Citizens United. Take money
Mhm.
out of politics.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of the issues we've been dealing with tonight have to do with that. So I would look to try. I'd look to not just try. I would look to end Citizens United because I believe in both parties it started to control that.
Right.
We need to give power back to voters
Right.
instead of special interest groups.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. This was fun.
I will tell you,
It-
like I said, I've been looking forward to this for a
Yeah,
while.
this is so great. This is so awesome. It was a great
Yes,
conversation. I love these because I always learn and I like jot things down because I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. So thank you so
you're
much. I do want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can donate, follow you, and all that stuff before we close out.
absolutely. Thank you very much. Three places you can go. I am at Holden for Congress on Facebook. I'll tell you, I'm more active over on Twitter. So that's at believe underscore Steve. That's where
Mhm.
we've been communicating here for the past
Yes.
few days. I'm also at believeindsteve.org.
Mhm.
I got a good name to come up with a nice little rhyming slogan. So believeindsteve.org. That has a number of my positions on there. You'll see what they are. A little bit about me,
Mhm.
about a little bit about our district, why we think we can win, and of
Mhm.
course it has the donation button there. I will say that our Republican opponent so far has about $1.2 million, and he is well funded.
Right.
And we've got it. We got to put up the fight there. So whatever anybody can do,
Right.
and I know folks are skittish right now. $5, $10 if you want to go
Exactly.
higher. Hey, every bit happens because that's another mailer we can send out. That's another
Right.
ad we can put out. That's more staff and volunteers we can get on the ground and driving people to polls.
Right.
So we've got to get this done. So if people want to go there, you'll see it, and you'll see my big smiling face on the front there. And know with that beautiful lake that's behind us, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. We got to clean
Right.
that up. We got to respect our communities.
Right.
We got to respect our history that way and why it's there.
Right.
And that means a lot to me. So, and,
Yes.
and I so appreciate coming on here. Like I said it a few times, I'm looking forward to coming on here for a couple months now when you reached out to us.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to get on here. So,
Yeah.
and
I'm,
so,
I'm
and I look forward to seeing you all again.
absolutely. And I just want to add, you don't have to be from New York to donate. Anybody
No,
can donate. You can be in Texas, Massachusetts, Georgia. It doesn't matter because we have to support all of our Democratic candidates. All of them. No seat is better than the other seat. All of them local, whatever, from the dog catcher on up. We have to support these people because we have a fight on our hands.
vote blue
Believe
no
in
matter
Steve.
who.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to put his information. Well, Casey will put his information in the description and where you can donate and all of that good stuff. Thank you,
thank you.
Steve. This was awesome. Thank you, everyone, the usual suspects. Thank you, Michelle, Mary, DA, Keiko, anyone else out there in the chat. Thank you guys. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye
Nope.
bye.